Welcome into the Cowboys Report. I am Tom Downey, and on this earlier than usual video, we've got some defensive coordinator news, rumors, and notes to get into. We're going to begin with Dan Quinn, who appears to have become the favorite to land the defensive coordinator job for the Dallas Cowboys. Per various reports out there, Quinn is flying into Dallas today for an in-person interview. Now, he reportedly had a virtual one already earlier last weekend. Now, remember, the Falcons fired Dan Quinn after an 0-5 start in the 2020 season, but he's had success in his NFL and technically college career as well as a defensive coordinator. We've talked about Quinn on this channel for months, actually. Right around the time that the Falcons fired him and Mike Nolan was not doing well, we were like, ooh, maybe the Cowboys could go hire him. Now, as Falcons head coach, not great. As Seahawks defensive coordinator, as the Florida DC, if you want to go back to the college ranks, pretty darn impressive. Now, again, I want to make this point kind of clear because I think it's important to mention. Hiring any coach, a coordinator or a head coach in particular, is not easy. Because in reality, there's going to be risk no matter what the Cowboys end up doing. If you hire an unproven defensive coordinator who's never called the plays, well, that's risky. But they could be anything. They could even be a boat, but they haven't done it before, right? If you're hiring someone who'd been fired, well, there was a reason that they ended up getting fired. Now, in a very limited sample size, Quinn was great with Seattle. I think Gus Bradley was a little bit better, but I also think Quinn was just better than Chris Richard was, right? After all, Quinn didn't get fired as Seahawks DC like Richard did. But I want to emphasize this point in particular. The reality is, for any coordinator, I think especially on defense more so than offense, your success is directly tied into how good your actual players are. The Falcons at defense did not have that much talent, if we're being honest here. So the Cowboys, regardless of who they hire as defensive coordinator, you have to upgrade the players as well. If you simply go from Mike Nolan to Dan Quinn, you're not going to get the type of change that we all want and know the Cowboys organization needs. Now, I think by going with Dan Quinn, you're going back to a defensive scheme, of course, hypothetically, that would be closer to the one the Cowboys had previously ran than this hybrid, creative, and at times too creative and confusing for the Cowboys players, defensive multiple scheme. You go back to Dan Quinn, you're going to run more of that 4-3 scheme. You still need a better defensive lineman, and you probably need better, faster linebackers. It's not really Sean Lee's game anymore. If you get Van Der Esch health, that could help there. And then in your secondary, you got to get more players. Now, I would actually argue, mainly from a cornerback perspective, the Cowboys' corners are actually much better than what the Falcons had last year. They had one competent corner and not a whole lot else in there. So if the Cowboys do end up going with Dan Quinn, making this hire, I think this would be a solid one. It's not going to matter if you don't upgrade the players, but I do think it's a good first step to fixing what was a very bad defense in 2020. So grade the potential hiring for me of Dan Quinn. Let's say the Cowboys end up adding him. What are you giving it? A, B, C, D, or F? I will make this question, by the way, the pinned comment on today's video. So if you get the ad break, scroll on down and type your votes. All right, some other interviews that we know of publicly around the Cowboys defensive coordinator spot include Joe Whitt, who we did mention a little bit more in depth on Saturday. Now, Whitt, again, interviewed for the job on Sunday, and reportedly was one of the front runners to get the gig last season before McCarthy pivoted and went with Mike Nolan instead. Now, Whitt's never been a coordinator. He's only 42, though. That certainly fits the no boomers allowed 2021 mantra. But he's also just kind of another McCarthy buddy, right? Like, this is someone who spent a lot of time in Green Bay under McCarthy. And I do wonder, because the Falcons have overhauled their coaching staff, and they're going to bring in a new head coach and probably change the defensive staff out altogether, I do wonder if there is a possibility of Quinn and Whitt reuniting in Dallas. Now, again, the Falcons' defensive talent was not great, especially in the secondary. I do want to make this point, though. If you just end up hiring the Falcons coaching staff and putting them in Dallas, no, I don't want that. You cannot go about it that route. If you want to bring over one or two guys, okay, different conversation, but you can't just hire your buddies. That's not a great path with not having success. If you're good, you can do that. If you're coming off a bad year, not a good route to go there. Now, both Quinn and Whitt were on our updated Mike Nolan replacements video, and you guys can go check that out. The thumbnail looks just like this. It's available on the channel, one of our most recent videos. I'll also make sure, by the way, to put the link in the comments and in the description. Of course, you already watched it if you guys are subscribed, and if you're not, now's a good time to do it. Hit that big red button and subscribe today. Today's show is made possible by our friends over at BetUS, still offering, by the way, their fantastic deposit bonus deal. When you head over to chatsports.com/bet, it'll take you right into the BetUS site. When you use promo code Cowboys125, you'll get a 125% deposit bonus. That way, if you miss some bets during the NFL playoffs, like I did this weekend, you still got a whole bunch of leftover money. It's all at chatsports.com/bet, but don't forget that promo code Cowboys125. Let's talk now I think, kind of surprising interview candidate, or interview reportedly, was Jason Simmons, the defensive backs coach for the Carolina Panthers, who interviewed for the job on Sunday. Also sounds like that one was a remote interview. Now, I do want to make note here. Various reports in the ESPN say Jerry Jones was in on that interview, and I think it's a good idea to not let Mike McCarthy just make all the decisions. You're an organization. You want to have various viewpoints in there. Now, I want to focus on this next stat here, right? Total DVOA and pass defense DVOA. These are nerd numbers, so keep that in mind. But what this does, it's better than using total passing yards allowed because, for example, if you're the Cowboys, like you were top 15 in pass defense based on yards, but also teams never threw it on you because they could run it every single play, right? So what this does is it balances it out based on the volume that you're experiencing and adjusts for opponent as well. So the Falcons' defense actually wasn't that bad, although they did get better once Dan Quinn was fired, but that's how they always operate. They're better after the bye. The Cowboys, not great. Carolina, also not great. Now, Simmons, in the end, if he were to be hired, would be a surprising pick, given he's never been a defensive coordinator. Also, just kind of feels like hiring your buddies once again. So when it comes to this defensive coordinator search and hiring, what is your confidence level in the Cowboys to make the right decision? Rate this form on a scale of 0 to 10. Maybe you feel a little bit better in light of the Dan Quinn news, and it's not just only Mike McCarthy buddies being interviewed. Let me know what you guys think. Rate it for me on a scale of 0 to 10. Now, I've mentioned this a few times, and I think it's important. That's why I said it several times, right? You can't just hire your good buddies. I think if you're the Cowboys, you kind of got to force/steer McCarthy into, yeah, I'm willing to hire someone I haven't worked with before. And the rationale there is it wasn't working. Like, if they were, thank God they didn't do it. If they had brought back Dom Capers, I'd have been livid. That's just a stupid idea, who was mentioned by the Dallas Morning News. That is a freaking boomer hire all the way through. You cannot just pick your friends. And I get that that's how the NFL often operates. Like, oh, yeah, we're going to hire someone there's a pre-existing relationship with. You know, it's a great way to get to know somebody. It's to interview them. So I'm glad they interviewed at least 3 people. Quinn was number 2 on my list. If that's the route they go, I'll feel better about it. Fits with McCarthy only hiring former head coaches as his defensive coordinator. But I didn't want to see a scenario where they interviewed 4 different people. They were all Mike McCarthy buddies, and they didn't really do much of an interview process. I would like more than 3, but at least one of those 3 was Dan Quinn. So we'll see what ends up happening, but as we sit right now, Quinn's the favorite to be the Cowboys' defensive coordinator, and I'm okay with that if they actually upgrade the defensive player personnel in the offseason.